Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, what is up? What is good? The King of Lightning is here today, bringing you guys and gals One Piece chapter 1179 official chapter review. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is one of the greatest reveals we have seen in One Piece, finally shown to the readers for the first time in all their glory. Saint Nerona, king of the world, one of the first 20 that created the world government, and the Delphi power is the devil's fruit. This is a lot. It's a lot to take in, and clearly the vast majority of the chapter is set up to usher in Emu into the scene on Elbaf. Elbaf, a country that Usopp said, if you want to come and conquer Elbaf, then you come the right way. Now all these schemes, all these plots in the shadows, you pull up. And Emu at first said, why would a ruler sully their hands that way? But now here they come after realizing that this could have all have been fated in some crazy way. Emu was starting to realize that something's going on here. There's some sort of threat of fate, and we just can't leave this to the admirals. We just can't have me and the boys. No, I'm gonna pull up. You guys stay here. There's chaos happening in the Holy Land. There's a lot to digest in this chapter for damn sure. Gonna probably theory craft in some respects. I think it's important theory crafting for Emu's character. So we'll dive into that sooner rather than later, trust me. But if you guys don't know, now you know, we do these live stream reactions. First and foremost, on my Cole Requiem YouTube channel and on my twitch.tv channel for the One Piece chapter reactions. And we had a hefty tier 3 discussion after the chapter read through, where we talked for a lot of hours. I think it was a 7-hour stream, so there's plenty to discuss and digest for the entire chapter. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the One Piece anime has returned. It is back, and it has some crispy, add a W there, crispy sound effects going on, and the animation is on point, and so far it's looking very good. So if you don't know, I do my episode reactions to the One Piece anime first and foremost on my Patreon, and then later uploaded to my Cole Reaction YouTube channel. So I have a lot of different content all over the place. You should absolutely 100% peep that. Patreon, Reaction, Requiem, Twitch, and so on and so forth. So that being said, now that that promo is all said and done, we have to dive headfirst in this chapter with, of course, bringing it down by its main components. First and foremost is going to be the pace and chapter structure, 1, then the character elements of the chapter, 2, and then finally the story progression components for the chapter. Now for the pace and chapter structure, number 1 is a large section where it's all in conjunction with each other. It's the Holy Land section where the 5 elders, including Garling, are talking to each other, and then you have Emu as well talking about how it's going to go to Elbaf no matter what, to try and stop this sort of crazy thread of fate that it's starting to notice. That's number 1. Number 2 is that we cut over back to Elbaf, where we go into the Western Village or the Sun World, where we get to see what's going on with Gerd and the captured Summers, and Zoro seeing this steel heart with a pressure valve on it. Number 3 is that we cut over to the Warlord School, where you have the injured Usopp and Brook. Frankie is considering actually side-rising their bodies, and then you have G-May calling for Chopper, and then Sanji just string up Killingham. He's closed out to dry. That's part 3. Number 4 is a very quick cut to Gunko in the frozen ice block. Number 5 is a cut back to the frozen school, where we get to see Loki and Luffy. They're trying to eat some food, and the food is frozen because of the OCDs that Lilith had in the area, where they took all that kinetic energy for the fire and then they converted it over to the Super Vega Cola. But because of that, the fruit is frozen. And then number 6 is the beginning of Emu's descent, where Nami feels something, and then bada bing, bada boom, you have a huge lightning bolt come down from the sky. And then you have more bolts coming from the sky, and we got a gigantic pentagram in the sky. You have this insane sort of demonic chanting and music going on. I kind of envision the same way as sort of Jack Skellington Halloween theme in some ways.
Everybody scream, please make way for a very special guy. All man Jack is king of the pumpkin
And then finally, you have the touchdown of Emu, and all of those subparts are in conjunction with each other because they're all kind of reactions to the same thing that's going on, where again, you have the touchdown of Emu. So those are the 6 components for the chapter. And I would say that's overall pretty good. Actually, very good. I would say 6 is around average, but on the lower end for pacing and structure. You could, if you really wanted to, I could break it down into 2 parts where you just have the Holy Land section and then the Elbaf section. But the beginning Elbaf section, when we go to it, they're not in conjunction with one another. Whereas afterwards, when Nami reacts to Emu touching down, then the entire process of all locations is a reaction to that. So with that being said, this chapter, again, for pacing structure, it has 6 parts to it, which I still think is very good. Next, we have the character components for the chapter. And for the chapter, the main thing going on for character is, of course, obviously, Saint Emu Nirina. Sin has arrived. One micro part you can add for character is something for Nami, where Nami does pre-sense that something is changing before we do see that gigantic black lightning bolt. And Nami has been able to perceive unique weather changes easier than other folks can. Recall what happened after Little Garden, where she could sense a gigantic cyclone coming their way, and so she told the crew to adjust course, and they did. Nami has always been very sensitive to that. That is, you can argue in some ways, her haki, her unique haki, like in the same vein how Usopp could, let's say, see through walls in Dressrosa. Similar thing here, because keep in mind this fact, that when we see the elders and company touch down, let's say in chapter 1110, the Planetfall chapter, everybody can see the gigantic columns of lightning and black fire. Everyone can see that. But haki, more often than not, even Conqueror's haki, is an invisible force to the vast majority of laymen. Keep that in mind. Not everyone can see haki, whether it be armament or conquerors, they just can't see it. The fact that everyone can see the black fire and the lightning and so on and so forth, that proves that for the most part, it's not haki related. Now, that all being said, Emu for character, number 2. The 99% of character for this chapter is Emu. And here's where we begin. Number 1, when Emu arrives to a location, we see a gigantic pentagram in the sky with 5 distinct pillars of fire. And these pillars in some way now representing, I think, the 5 elders, which signifies just how important the 5 elders are to Emu's constitution. Recall what happened in the Harald flashback, where Harald gets killed by Loki, and then Emu suffered a drawback. So the fact that we see 5 pillars of black fire and lightning form around the pentagram, I think just, again, that does signify how important the Abyssal Coven users are to Emu itself. That's number 1. But the number 2 is that after we see this gigantic pentagram in the sky, which, mind you, the castle of Elbaf is titanic, and this pentagram is covering not only the castle, but that whole section of tree branch that Loki was chilling on before. He's covering that whole area with that pentagram. After that, we have seemingly the buildings come to life. The gigantic Elbathian Western Village homes are coming to life, as well as the trees in the area. The trees start doing a bron. You have this sort of demonic, like baddish looking features to them now, where the top parts of them are jagged mouths, you have their tongues sticking out, jagged teeth. You have even the trees going through that same thing with like the kind of horns, all that kind of stuff. So it seems like a demonic parade of some kinds is ensuing when Emu just arrives to the area, and he's granting demonic life to the inanimate objects around him. This is a very similar thing we see with Big Mom, where Big Mom with her soul powers could have an entire living forest on Whole Cake Island. And they were very human because people would give a part of their lifespan every year to Big Mom to help maintain the enchanted forest. Emu is doing that, but essentially everyone here is just, black. Demonic black, not that kind of black. But it shows you how important demon or devil is to Emu. But the concept is, again, a very similar concept to what you see with Big Mom and her soul powers. That's number 2. Number 3 is that Emu, when it's in the throne room, it spits out blood, signifying that there's something going on with Emu's body in some way. Whether it's due to teleportation itself, whether it's due to Emu about to transform, whether it's due to it being in the lower world, it's not really clear as to why Emu's coughing up blood. But Emu does cough up blood, which means that something about its body isn't functioning the right way. Why that's the case, we don't know, but it is the case. Something is up with Emu's constitution and it's not aligning properly, spits out blood. That is the third thing for Emu for character. Number 4 for character. Now, we already knew that Emu could transform. We saw what happened with Sabo and King Cobra when they met Emu, where Emu did transform into a gigantic shadowy form to come down on Sabo and company while the elders were also transforming. So we know he could transform already. But number 4 is that when we do see its form for the first time, its true form, if you would, it seems to be bigger than one of the windows in the spire that's standing on. That's very important because this is not your regular castle. This castle is built for ancient giants and giants. And the fact that Emu right now, in terms of its body, in terms of its weapon, its glaive, they seem to be larger than the windows of the West Castle, signifies just how large it is. Emu is super sized. Emu in this form should not be, let's say, a 6'5" or a 6'1" or a 5'7". Emu should probably be in the ballpark of like 200 feet, like no cap. Emu's got to be around the same size as a giant, 65 feet or 20 meters tall, or he's ancient giant. So that's like 67 meters tall, which is around 225 feet tall. That's how big he has to be. And the weapon, even bigger than that. And they're squatting right now. So when they stand up, probably more like the size of an ancient giant. Most likely ancient giant size. Which probably means that Emu is, and here's where I'm gonna theorycraft now for a bit, that probably means that Emu is an ancient giant of old. Even though it's Saint Emu of Nerona, unless the Neronians themselves have some tie to ancient giants, it's possible it did come from another area where ancient giants used to live. If he's been around for over 1,000+ years and he's ancient giant size, then it has some connection to the violent ancient giants of yore. The guys that made Warland Elbath, those dudes. It has a connection to those in some way, shape, and form. Though it is possible that Emu could also be a Oni / ancient giant hybrid, where they're a mix of the two races. But that would imply that Onis and ancient giants have separate origins. I'm not too sure that's the case or not, because I would argue that, others have argued that Onis are a deviation of ancient giant. Outside of that, number 5, more physical traits of Emu. Emu has horns, and these horns seem to be more like Yamato's and Black Maria's horns. And you do see their eyes. Their eyes seem to be more feminine, but it all seems that Emu is masculine, because Emu was identified as a he by the elders. So we have to wait and see what's going on there. During the stream, the word twink was used quite often. So Emu, very likely male, but with some feminine traits here and there. And then we see this very long flowing hair. What color that hair is, we don't know, but the hair does have swirls in it, like in the same vein that you would see with Luffy's hair when he's in Gear 5. And then also we have these black clouds that form around Emu. Either they're forming Emu, or it's a byproduct of Emu's weapon, its glaive. Because at the very end of the glaive, there seems to be a cloud that's there. Whether it's the actual, let's say, design choice where there's a cloud always there, or let's say it's just in the background, it's actually, let's say, just the remnants of Emu arriving, we're not too sure. But there are black clouds that are present there that have these, again, unique swirls that you would see with Luffy's swirls on his hair, signifying probably Deathroot swirls in some way. Then you have this ring of fire, like the sort of wispy, cloudy ring of fire around the backing part of his glaive, or they could be behind him, like a sort of floating halo behind him. We're not too sure. And there appears to be more than 13 eyes that encompass this halo. Now, what that means is a good question. it could, let's say, be in reference to the 20 kings that formed the world government, and so it could be 20 eyes. Or if it's, let's say, a low number, it could be 16. The number 16 is very important to the celestial dragons. Remember chapter 763. In that chapter, which also winds up panning out to be the number 16 when you add 7, 6, and 3 together. One of the first scenes we see in this chapter is a flashback image of himself, his brother, and his father being hung up, and then there's a fire underneath them. And then it's the citizens of the lower world, and they're getting their frustration and their rage and their grief out on them. And then one of the guys says, and I quote, "My sons were only 5 and 2 years old, and for the so-called crime of walking across their path, the celestial dragons shot them 16 times with a pistol," which is a tragedy. But then Dofi also has a technique called the 16 holy bullets. Then, after Marineford, when Luffy, Jinbei, and Rayleigh, they go back to Marineford, and then they ring the bell 16 times as a funeral for Ace, but also the Marines saw that as a declaration of war against the world government. Then we see the 16 death rays in the manga that destroy the Lulusia kingdom by the object from on high. The number 16 is a very prevalent number for the world government and celestial dragons. And then also in the calendar year of the world itself too, it is the 16th century of the sea serpent, or the sea circle. The number 16 is everywhere. It's everywhere in the world of One Piece. And it looks like we could be getting an answer as to why the number 16 is so prevalent for the celestial dragons and the world government. It's because it refers to essentially the Great One. It's coded Hail Satan, essentially. Where part of Imu's design could be the 16 eyes that we see in that black halo around it. Or if the glaive itself has an ability, it could be referring to the glaive, where the glaive that has the jagged part and the hook to it, the glaive could have its own power, and it associates somehow with 16, those 16 eyes. So whether it's 20 or 16, right now it's more than 13 eyes that we see in that big circle halo around Imu. We also get to see the Depths Covenant symbol, the tattoo that Herald gets after he upgrades from Shallow Covenant to Depths Covenant. We got to see that mark on Imu's cape or jacket, however it is. We got to see that on the left side of the image, where you can clearly see it. It has the circle and the cross going through it, and then it has the horns going from both sides of it. So that's where the mark comes from. The mark of the Depths Covenant, at least that one, also signifies a correlation to Lord Imu, aka the devil, aka Satan. Also, we gotta see 3 skulls on the demon tail, and I'm assuming it's the same demon tail that we saw skewer Sabo and King Cobra in the Holy Land. It's the same demon tail. Imu's also exuding a tremendous amount of haki that can be felt on the other side of the branch where Loki and Luffy are. Finally, another design that we see for Imu is that when we zoom into Imu's facial features, and it has the nails, again, very feminine features for, let's say, the eyes and the nose that remind you of Robin. It is what it is. When Robin gets pissed off and she has those eyes, and then the same nose, Robin's nose too, and then also when she turns into the devil's child, Robin also has like horns and wait. So Robin and Imu of Nerona have a lot of similarities. I'm starting to wonder if there's some sort of origin here with the country of Nerona, Imu, and Robin, like ancestry, in the same vein as Yusuke Urameshi in Yu Yu Hakusho with the atavism of the Mazaku. The lineage of demon lineage that goes back for like centuries, millennia even, right? So maybe that could be off base. And the back of their hand has what seems to be like a circuit that comes from an eye, and then it goes down their arm, based on what we see in the larger panel where they're sitting on top of the spire. And then you also have this part that goes to their index finger. It seems to be a circuit of some kind, but the eye is very intriguing because the eye does signify quite a bit. Obviously, a lot of folks are, let's say, referring to the top of the spire as, let's say, a pyramid, and then you have the Illuminati eye on top of the pyramid, similar there when Imu was squatting up. But then also, it reminded me a lot of what we saw with a One Piece Film Red video. it's specifically Uta's song to summon top Musica. There is a official video online for that, and when you have her sing that namesake song to summon a demon from another plane of existence, we have a gigantic eye, very similar, I would say, to the Eye of Horus, where you have the eye watching. It's watching her as she sings that song. And there's a very similar eye on the back of Imu's hand. So it's making me wonder quite a bit about the details. We do know officially, Oda has said officially, that there is an entity that is similar to Top Musica in the world of One Piece, but we haven't gone to them just yet. Well, I think we have. I think that we have. This may be a stretch, but at the same time, I think it's not impossible given Vegapunk's words about where the powers come from in Devil Fruits. And we have, for the first time, confirmation of the power of Imu. Imu has the Devil's Fruit. The Devil's Fruit. So let's say in the same way as how Chopper has no model to his human fruit, he's just a human fruit. It looks like Imu is just the devil's fruit, just the devil. Now, whether or not that means that Imu is the first devil fruit user or has the first devil fruit, we don't know. But I think it does signify in some way the eye and the ability and the connection to Film Red that these powers and maybe it itself is tied to another plane of existence, another realm, another reality, if you would, right? That's the way it seems to be to me. And then the circuitry that we see on Imu's body could be referring to the technology of old that maybe was incorporated in order to manifest the powers, because technology in One Piece also has things that folks deem as magic, but it's not really magic, it's technology, right? But it's technology so advanced it appears to be magic. So the circuitry on Imu's body and its design, what we see on its face, on its hand, could be independent of, let's say, its actual powers of the demon tail, the skulls, and all that jazz. So when it comes to character, Imu gets obviously the lion's share. So much it's insane. And Imu's design is crazy good right now. Crazy good. Folks said before that it's, let's say, a mix of Madara, Acnologia, Shinra Bashomin from Fire Force, and I can see it, dude. I can see it. I definitely can. There's one last thing I want to point out as well. Zoom in near the glaive, you can kind of see what appears to be like a snake mouth, where you have the demon tail wrap around, but then on the other end side appears to be like a snake mouth. Sea circle, sea serpent. I have to wonder about a lot of the storytelling and all the hints. Have they all been leading up to just a reveal of Imu, where Imu's design is so embedded into the world that myths and stories, certain desires, like for example, the desire to gigantify, you have to wonder. There could be a lot going on. I mean, there already is a lot going on there in terms of the design of Imu. The bad boy, somewhat flamboyant EK main devil, oh yeah. It's gonna sing to a lot of ladies and a lot of fellas of a unique orientation too, I'll put it like that. But overall, the design, crazy intense, very intense. And you can glean quite a bit off of the design in terms of, say, the world building, the storytelling, the story. You can, but right now they're all theories so far. They're just all theories. So that is when it comes to the character section of this video. It's pretty hefty for one character, undeniably. And there's a lot more to come. Oh, there's so much more to come. But I would say, again, right now, crazy good for character. Crazy good, like 10 out of 10 for character. Even though it's one character, it's very important. Some really good stuff. Finally, story progression for this chapter. Number one, we get a better sense of what's going on right now in the Holy Land. And it appears that, at least as far as you can tell, there hasn't been anyone invading the Holy Land. It's actually infighting among the Holy Land people itself. Where the rubble we saw in the last chapter, that's all due to infighting. You may say that's kind of crazy because how are these folks, these celestial dragons, causing so much damage? But keep in mind that you have holy knights that are there, and there's probably holy knight infighting, one. Two is that a lot of these folks have power users as slaves. They're very powerful slaves, right? So think about when Boa Hancock and her sisters were slaves in the Holy Land. They were force-fed fruits powers as a measure to torture them. If you have slaves of power abilities that are force fight each other, you can see a lot of damage to the area without question. But it looks like Shamrock arriving to the Holy Land has quelled a lot of that chaos. Yeah, folks are still starving, and even York is having a hard time because she want to be fed fat all day, every day, 24/7, 365. But no, there's a food shortage. After Egget Island, Dragon had to move, and that move was to attack the supply routes of the Holy Land, attacking the gondolas, attacking the ships going from other countries to the Holy Land with food supplies. He's been targeting those food supplies, and so far, very successful, to the point now where, again, it's causing a lot of infighting amongst these celestial dragons. So no Blackbeard plays yet. No dragon plays directly on the Holy Land itself. Right now, it's literally starve them out, and it seems to be working very effectively. But this is also glazed for Shamrock too. It's undeniable. Shamrock was able to stymie a lot of the infighting between the celestial dragons, and he was probably making similar moves that we see with Garling in chapter 1086. Garling at that point in time was the supreme commander of the Holy Knights, and Shamrock is the commander of the Holy Knights. So it's very safe to say that the same authority that he held, where he could actually take out Myo's guard, have him executed publicly in front of all these celestial dragons, Shamrock probably has that same energy too. And there's also a very good chance that Shamrock is very popular amongst the celestial dragon natives too, probably in a very similar way as how popular Garling was in his heyday. Oh yeah. Now, as the elders discuss what to do about the current situation, well, let's say Elbaf, they do think about options like them going themselves, or even sending over marine admirals, plural. But Emu decides, nah, this could all been preordained. We have images of Rox, Roger, we have Shirahoshi, Shanks, Harald, we have Loki, Whitebeard, Luffy, Blackbeard, we have Cobra, Nefertari, D, Lily, Joyboy, Davy, Jones, and so on and so forth. All these things are kind of coming together. And then once again, there's a fixation on Vivi. The fact that Vivi looks very similar to Queen Lily back in the day, it's got to involve that, because Lily did betray Emu and company and sent the poneglyphs across the entire world, had the powers of the Paw fruit at that point in time. These things do matter, and there's gonna probably be at some point in time, very soon, a refocus on Vivi for the story, because again, Emus are gonna move now, but in that chain of thoughts, Vivi stands out first and foremost. But ultimately speaking, the elders can't really stop Emu if it wants to go down, but they do know to how if it leaves, something is going to happen. And I quote, "But great Emu, in the lower world, you are ... What that means probably refers to why Emu was spitting out blood in the first place when it arrived to the throne room in West Castle. Whenever Emu goes down to the lower world, something happens. But whenever it's in the red line, it's okay. Or it maintains whatever's going on with its current form. And lo and behold, the words of Usopp wound up becoming true. Emu does arrive. But before that, we do get a better look at the steel heart, the metal heart that we saw in the previous chapter that belonged to Summers. And it's crazy because the way Gerd is treating Summers like he's a magnet, but then also his heart is a steel heart and it has a pressure valve on it. Probably a pressure valve on it. Why? What? Immediately, as an NL fanboy, I went right to the cover story. I'm like, hold on. The aliens on the moon, all of them, with very few exceptions, have pressure gauges on them, the same way we see on the steel heart. And I'm wondering, when Harald became a Depths Covenant user, did his heart also transform into a steel heart with a pressure gauge on it? A melding of powers and technology, science. Is that possible? And is this unique to Summers, or is it for every Holy Knight and Elder? When Zoro says, if I destroy this, they won't be able to go back to normal, so they meaning all of them, right? So that means Gunko, that means Killingham, all Holy Knights. So if we take Zoro's words, it could be a they. It applies to everybody, but it could also just be Summers so far, because when we see Sanji string up Killingham, we don't see his body parts trying to reattach like a magnet. We do see the ice break around Gunko when originally Loki said that she can't break out and only Ragnir can thaw the ice out, which does imply actually that Ragnir's ice is more potent than even Kuzan's ice. And if that flash freeze that we see happened to Gunko is also went down on Punk Hazard, then maybe the giants of Galala are on Punk Hazard, and they are still alive to this day, because Ragnir or Ratatask at that point in time, the Ice Squirrel, flash froze all the Galala giants, and later on they became Punk Hazard, the island, from a millennia ago. That is possible. But I'm guessing that the reason why it's being undone now with Gunko is because Emu disappeared, and then now there's a pocket of air or a vacuum that Emu existed, now it's gone. The empty vacuum could be destroying the ice from the inside out. And then finally, again, the whole Emu touchdown scene, I went over in full detail in the character section of the video, but this section is super important. Emu has arrived to the Holy Land. We see a part of West Castle be destroyed. As it transforms, the raging fire is now going even greater on branch 8. And there's a possibility that this whole branch can't be saved. I've had my suspicions, but I believe that what we saw in chapter 1141, where we found out that there was an old village called Hugin, and there was a big bolt of lightning that struck Elbath and that branch, and so they decided to cut that branch off. And mind you, even though Adam wood is still very powerful wood, way more durable than normal wood, it's still wood. And fire and lightning are still the weakness of Elbath in many respects. And because there's even more fire now because of Emu arriving, and because they're already having a hard time on the 8th branch, really trying to quell some of these fires, there's a good chance that this whole thing has to get cut. Either Ratataskar's ice can just suppress all the fire immediately, or the entire branch has to be cut. And that's tens of miles of wood just falling down into the lower realm, which is going to cause a lot of damage to the lower realm for sure. But it may have to be done no matter what, because again, there's so much fire, and there's going to be even more fighting happening in the near future now that Emu's here. So the entire branch may just have to go. And chapter 1141 was foreshadowing of that moment. But that is it when it comes to the story progression. That's also very, very good too. Finding out what's going on in the Holy Land in greater detail, Emu arriving to Elbath, and then Emu's form revealed. Oh yeah, quintessential stuff without question. So I would say overall for the chapter rating, I think this chapter is an incredible chapter. I'm gonna say it's a 9 out of 10 chapter of One Piece without a damn doubt. It's an amazing chapter, even though the vast majority of the chapter is just build up and lead up to Emu being revealed coming in the chapter. Most of it's kind of simple, but I think that we do make enough progression in the story, and for character, what we do get is just incredible, just based on design and intro alone, and what that signifies for the world at large. So that could be too high of a rating, but I would say it's a 9 out of 10 chapter, an incredible chapter of One Piece, no doubt about that. So let me know your stance on the subject matter at hand. If you enjoy your boys' video content, thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and click on that bell to join the notification squad. I'm gonna catch you guys and gals on the flip side.